So what we see here is a historical marker for the Colfax riot. It's in Louisiana. And it's very revealing in terms of the way Reconstruction has been remembered throughout the country, but particularly in the South. It says, on this site occurred the Colfax riot in which 3 white men and 150 Negroes were slain. Already we should notice the imbalance between those numbers as suspicious. Then it says, this event on April 13th, 1873 marked the end of carpetbag misrule in the South. Hopefully you noticed the loaded language there. By calling it the end of carpetbag misrule, it's characterizing Reconstruction government in a certain way, and the redemption that came afterwards, I use that term in air quotes, the redemption that occurred afterwards, and it depicts in a much more positive light. Now, what happened at Colfax? Well, long story short, there was a contested election in Louisiana in which both Republicans and Democrats claimed victory in the governor's race. Ultimately, the federal government weighed in and ruled on behalf of the Republican governor. However, when the Republican governor tried to take office, the White League, a white military group, attacked the Republicans and African Americans throughout the state. And the biggest violence was seen in Colfax. There, the White League attacked a nearly all-black militia that was protecting the elected government in a courthouse. The white forces eventually surround the courthouse and overwhelm it. At this point, they set it on fire. Some African Americans fled the courthouse. They were caught and executed. Others tried to surrender but were killed in the process. Others did successfully surrender but were taken prisoner and executed later that night. And that's how 150 African Americans died. Colfax is thus the most egregious example of the way the Democrats used force to retake power in the South, but it's not the only example. And what will come next is throughout the South, Democrats are going to retake power, and we'll see less and less political will on behalf of the North and the Republican Party to counter that trend. Basically, for a while, Northern federal troops can keep order in the South and keep violence from. The will to do this falls apart because for several reasons, I guess. I mean, one is that plenty of Northerners don't particularly care about protecting the rights of the newly freed African American slaves. Another reason is that the Republican Party lost credibility amidst a lot of scandals. The other thing is that it was a very costly thing to do, and especially after the Depression of 1873, where there are meager resources, plenty of people don't want those government resources spent fighting a very hard battle to keep control of the South. The result is that the North pulls out, and the white Southerners retake power, and we basically have one-party rule of the Democrats for about a century. The result, therefore, is we get what is called the Jim Crow South. We'll learn about what happens after circa 1877 in a future lesson, but what we're actually going to do tomorrow is focus on the way Reconstruction has been remembered. What I just gave you here is pretty in tune with modern scholarship on Reconstruction, but Reconstruction hasn't always been recounted that way in historians' work. We'll read textbooks from various points in history and see how the emphases and value judgments made about Reconstruction have changed over time. This will tell a very interesting story about Reconstruction. It will tell a very interesting story about American history and how, as America has changed, so has the history of Reconstruction. And it will also tell, I think, a pretty useful story about history in general, which is that we tell our versions of the past based on our own values in the present. And thus, we always should be looking at when something was written and try to connect the way we view the past with the way we view our own present.